Oh, that's right. Okay.
So yeah, I just want to kind of get a track of your stories, get a track of just document your life and things that maybe I've heard before but want to hear again and just be able to reflect on. So I just kind of want to start with like some basic information, like where you were born, when you were born, and just kind of like where you grew up.
Okay. When I was born, the family was living in Mountain View, and but the closest hospital was the county hospital in San Jose. So I was born there in 1938. We lived in Mountain View until I was about 3.5, and then we moved up to Santa Rosa because the war had started, and my dad was deferred from being in the military because he was a carpenter, and they wanted him working constantly on military bases. So the military bases he was working on were up in north of San Francisco, so we moved up to Santa Rosa, and I lived in what was the equivalent of a motel there until I was about 4, and then we moved in the house that I grew up in, just outside the city limits on the south end of Santa Rosa, and I lived in that house and went to school until I graduated from high school in 1956. And I was very, very fortunate. There were 2 boys in my neighborhood that were there when I moved there, and they were both my age. And so I grew up with those, and one of them was my best friend all the way through school. And anyway, and then I went off to San Jose State for college and pretty well stayed in the San Jose area for the rest of my life. And obviously a number of things along the way. When I was 22, I got married to my first wife. We had 3 kids. And then when I was 35, we split up. As a matter of fact, a little trivia thing, with her, my first date was on my 21st birthday, and she moved out on my 35th birthday. So it was 14 years to the day that our relationship, basically.
I have some questions about your kids. So Kevin was the oldest, right?
Yes. Kevin was born in 1961.
And sorry, just to go backtrack a little bit.
Yeah.
You were born in what year?
I was born in 1938.
1938. Okay. Yeah. So it was Kevin.
Kevin was born in 1961. Marcia was born in 1963, and Lisa was born in 1964.
Okay. And then they were how old when the 2 families merged?
Okay. Let's see. So again, Janie moved out in April of 1973, and later that month I re-met Carol, who I'd met once before at a party, and so we started dating, and we both knew right off the bat it was something special going on, and so we dated.
Such a great chemistry.
Yeah, there's so many being with her.
Yeah.
Anyway, and we dated for roughly a year and a half, and then August of 1974, we got married, and Carol had a child from her first marriage, Kelly,
My mom,
and Kian's mom, and then so when we got married, Kevin had just turned 13. Lisa was actually, we got married on Lisa's 10th birthday. and she was a little upset that we superseded her birthday. And then Marcy would have been Marcy would have been 11 at that time. And anyway, or I guess
My mom was 7.
Yeah, and yeah, Kelly would have been 8 that April.
8. Okay.
So she turned 8 not too long before then, I think. Yeah. And so we merged the families, and
How did that go?
good question. I was going to say, on the whole, that worked out very well. Of course, the whole time, the year and a half we were dating, at least half the time we were doing stuff with the kids. So it wasn't like the kids didn't know each other at all.
Yeah.
They, like I mentioned to you earlier, that
You did.
very early, about within a week of our first date, Carol had me and my kids over for dinner.
Yeah.
And so Kelly and then my 3 kids got together really quickly. In fact, that evening, a little bit of an anecdote, but at one point, after dinner and whatnot, and Carol and I were sitting on the couch talking, and the 4 kids were off in Kelly's bedroom. And we didn't have any idea what they were up to. And all of a sudden, the 4 of them come running out, and they come up to us. And you got to understand, we've been dating for less than a week. And they came, "Are you guys getting married?" You know. And yeah, it kind of got silent for a minute there. And Lisa turned to Carol and says, "Can I start calling you Mom?"
Oh wow.
And so anyway, so that was an awkward moment. And we told them, hey, we're just getting to know each other. We said the obvious, but anyway, get back to the main point is that, for instance, I had the summer before Carol and I started dating, I had booked a cabin up at Lake Almanor for a week, and so when I was going to go up to Almanor, I invited Carol and Kelly to join us, and so we went up a couple of days before she could, and she came up and joined us. And so it was like, semi-typical. Here, the 6 of us spent a week together at Almanor. Yeah. And one of the things that went through my mind during that week was, hey, this is all going pretty good, Yeah. And so by then I was seriously considering, about really a long-term relationship kind of thing.
How long had you guys dated before you got married?
About a year and a half. We started dating in April of '73 and got married in August of '74. Okay. And we would have probably gotten married earlier, but realistically, and this is not a complaint or anything negative, but your grandma was a little concerned about all of a sudden being a mom of 4 kids.
Yeah.
And, for me, going 3 to 4 wasn't as big a deal as her going 1 to 4.
Yeah, I imagine. It was just like...
And so...
My mom always describes it as just like, it was kind of, for a while, just like, her and Nana, and so it's like, I think that might have been kind of hard for them, is like just like adding people into that such a close relationship. Yeah, it was more difficult for your mom than anybody, I think, because well, again, we all knew each other really well, so it wasn't there was not a getting acquainted process once we got married kind of thing at all, But all of a sudden, a couple things. All of a sudden, Kelly wasn't the only child, right. And she had some adjusting to make, and so there were some bumps in the road there. Nobody's fault. It was just the circumstances, and also she was also the only grandchild of all the grandparents. She was the only one, and we got married, and all of a sudden, so she had to start sharing things, that she hadn't shared before, stuff like that. And so there was some adjustment there, and Lisa had been the youngest, and all of a sudden she wasn't the youngest. So there, Kelly and Lisa for about the first month had a couple of squabbles over nothing in particular, Yeah. So there were adjustments. Yeah. But on the whole, it was relatively smooth. It wasn't, god awful. We're gonna hate each other kind of thing forever. Yeah. That kind of stuff. But it's just so weird for me to like think of like a merging process, because for me it's like it's always just been family. Yes. So like there was no merging process. It's just like since day one it's family, and like I don't know, it's all I've known, and I've loved it like ever since. But wow. I also want to go back just a little bit just about your family. Like, do you have siblings?
Yeah. Okay, I had an older sister. Mm-hmm. She was 4.5 years older than me.
What was her name?
Shirley.
Shirley? Okay.
Anyway, and my parents, briefly, both my parents were born in California. Mm-hmm. My dad was born in a little town up in Mendocino County that hardly anybody's ever heard of. It was way back in the hills, town called Covelo, and it was a small town, and he grew up fairly poor, okay? His mother died when he was 5 years old from tuberculosis, and his father, for whatever reason, I don't know any of the circumstances other than his father couldn't raise him, and my dad was the youngest of 10 kids.
Wow, 10. 10.
And he was, and one of his older sisters had just recently gotten married, and she was like 19 or kind of thing. And her husband was about the same age, and they took over raising her 5 youngest siblings. And of course, my dad was the youngest, and so he grew up with them. So they were more like grandparents to me than aunt and uncle. They were young. And my dad's dad died when my mom was pregnant with me, so I never saw him. I heard stories about him from my parents, and then, of course, my sister, remembered him because she was 4 years old when he passed away, so she'd had some experiences with him, but that was it. My mom was raised in a town on the west coast of Northern California called Point Arena, and she was the oldest of 13. And so,
Big families.
yeah. So anyway, and they were very poor also. So but she borrowed money from an uncle and put herself through college and became a teacher.
Oh, wow.
And my dad at one point became a carpenter, so that's what they were doing when I was growing up, was that. And my mom stopped teaching for a while and then went back to it when I was about junior high age. And my dad worked as a carpenter or foreman or superintendent, or formed his own carpentry business off and on for most of my life.
Did you guys live on like a farm or something like that? Because you talked about chickens.
We owned a piece of property just outside the city limits so that we could have some animals on the property. And it was not that big a chunk of land. I forget, it was like 75 by 125 feet or something like that. But we had the house was relatively small. It was a little 2-bedroom house that eventually we expanded to a 3-bedroom house. My dad, being a carpenter, just added on. Took his hammer and saw and did his thing. But so we had a backyard where we could do stuff. We grew vegetables back there. Of course, World War II, that was a big thing. You had your little farm so you could feed yourself. And then we had chickens in the very back, and my dad had built a chicken house and a little pen for the chickens to run around in. And so we had chickens, and I had at one point very early on when I was, 3.5 or 4 years old, maybe before we moved to Santa Rosa, we got a dog from the pound. And I grew up with that dog. Freckles was his name. And the best we could figure out, he was about 1.5 years old when we got him, and he was half Cocker Spaniel, half Springer Spaniel, but there may have been some other elements in there that we don't know about. But that was he was a great, great, great dog for me to grow up with. We were buddies. Anyway, and then a bit of a modeling story, but when I was in junior high, I took a bus to school. And the bus, we lived about 3 houses from the corner. And we lived, like I say, out at San, so there was no sidewalks or street lights or anything like that. So we were semi-country, but we were in a neighborhood where there were just houses along the street, right next door to each other. But anyway, when I would get off the bus every day for school, Freckles would be sitting at that corner waiting for me. And my mom told the story. She said she'd be home, and Freckles would be laying in the driveway or whatever, and just shortly before the bus would arrive, he'd get up and toddle down to the corner. He had an internal clock, right? Well, at one point, Freckles' body started giving away, and it just got to the point, and Dad took him off the pound, had him put away. And I was semi-okay with it until that was over a weekend, and that next Monday when I got off the bus and he wasn't there, I came unglued.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It was that's when it just hit me right between the eyes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
But anyway, because he would be, and the two of us would run back to the house together, and it would just, and we it was so cool. But anyway, so that was it. Then
let me pause you for a
go
second.
ahead.
I just want to make sure that we're still rolling.
Okay,
We're good.
we're in business still.
Yep.
Okay, and then when I was in high school for me was pretty good, but being in Santa Rosa was a town of about 30,000 people back then.
Mm-hmm.
It's a whole different world now, but back then it was a town of about 30,000 people. And of course, there was one high school, one junior high, so everybody knew each other, kind of thing. And I was a little gun shy about dating in high school because if I ask a girl and she said no, the whole school would know about it in 30 seconds, right? And I would just, I was kind of intimidated, and wasn't that self-assured and stuff like that. And there were just other things. So I was just really anxious for high school to get over with so I could go off to college and reinvent myself to a degree. Yeah, I think that's not an uncommon scenario. But anyway, so I did, and the reason one of the reasons I chose San Jose State, besides the fact my mom went there, but she was a teacher, so I had no intention of being a teacher. My game plan was to be a CPA, Certified Public Accountant. Okay, and so one of the things my senior year at high school they had anybody that wanted to could take a day or two off of school and go around and talk to the people who were in the profession they planned to go into. Cool. So I jumped at that and went around and talked to about 3 or 4 different CPAs in Santa Rosa. And one of my questions to them was, what college would they recommend for me, given the fact I couldn't go to a private school and I kind of want to stay in California, all that sort of stuff. And the basic story I got from most of them was USF in San Francisco or San Jose State. Well, USF is a private school, and it's in San Francisco, and I really didn't want to do that, so San Jose State was it. So I went to San Jose State, and that worked out really, really well for me. One of the things that happened, I got to San Jose State, and I really didn't know anybody there. And I was in a freshman line for something or other, and the guy standing next to me was in the same boat I was, so we became instant buddies, And I'd gone off to college with a horrible, horrible, horrible image of fraternities. I thought it was a bunch of rich, stuck-up, mean-spirited guys, And anyway, so I'm sitting doing whatever in the boarding house I'm living in, and it was not a good situation, but that was where I was stuck at that point. And this new friend of mine came around and said, "Hey, the fraternities are having a rush. You want to go around?" I said, "I don't have anything to do with those guys." And he said, "It's free beer and donuts." And I said, "Let's go." And then I got to talking to the guys of the fraternity, and in one of them, this one guy and I sat down and had a talk about just my mindset, about the fact that I thought. He said, "Oh, I know." He said, "That's not uncommon, Yeah. He said, "But that's not it." And so I got to know him and other guys, and so I ended up joining that fraternity and immediately moved into the fraternity house. And that was one of the best things that ever happened to me, because to this day I still have close friends from that fraternity. And one of the guys that I room with, a little bit of a story, he and I connected right off the bat. And so, and I just, I'd gone to a couple of dances that they had for the potential pledges and this sort of stuff, so I got to know him pretty well. And I'll never forget when they were, you had to go to what they called the student union and go in there, and they had things, and you just say your name and they give you an envelope, and it had in there the fraternities that wanted you to join them, right? And so there were only 2 that I was interested in, and both of them asked me to join. Well, I'd already made up my mind for sure which one I wanted to join. So I, turned in, signed my little card and turned it in, and immediately walked down to 11th Street, which was Fraternity Row. And I would turn around the corner, and there was this guy, my new friend of mine, playing tag football in the middle of the street. He took one look at me, and he come running over. We gave each other a big hug or some damn thing. And he ended up being roommates for years. And then not to make too long a story out of it, but at one point after we graduated, we just kind of went separate ways. He was working days, I was working nights. I had kids, he didn't. Our first wives were not best friends. It wasn't enemies, but it was just awkward kind of stuff. There were just a bunch of reasons we just kind of drifted apart, And then when my first wife and I decided to split up, and we started the divorce process, it went in the papers. Well, his mother called him up and said, "Hey, Jim, is this the Ken that used to come over for dinner and stuff?" Because he lived in Los Gatos. And so, he'd take me home and, with dinner. So I got to, his parents really well. Yeah. And Jim says, "Yeah, that's him." So he contacted me. And I called him back, and I said, "Hey, I'd like to see you again." He says, "Come up for dinner,
This is how many years after you guys graduated?
Oh, God. Well, this was in 1973. Okay, because Carol and I were dating about that point.
Right.
Okay, and so I said, yeah, I'll come up to dinner, but I got, well, you saw the paper, so Janie and I split up, and I'm dating this gal, Carol. I want to bring her along. He says, yeah. He says, I'm divorced too, and I'm remarried. So we went up, and the two ladies connected big time too.
Oh, really?
And so we became, really close as a group. And so for years and years, up until he died in 1989 from cancer, we were really, really close. Jim Griffith. Your mom knew him because we'd do stuff and,
Yeah.
we all were up here at Almanor together one time,
Oh, really?
Yeah, stuff like that. So we do a lot of stuff together because when he remarried, she had 2 kids she'd had from her first marriage that they'd adopted. And so all of a sudden he had a couple kids and, so anyway.
Yeah.
That went off on a long tangent, didn't I?
No, I mean, that's just like the little things in life. Are just kind of interesting.
But that was an extension of my college thing. So I just was very, very fortunate to go to San Jose State and join that fraternity, and it just it made so many changes in my life.
Was that what you always wanted to do, or did you have kind of like
be a CPA?
A dream job? Like,
Well, when I was always pretty good in math.
Mm-hmm.
And my 7th grade math teacher planted the seed. He said, you're really, really good in math. He said, you ought to think about something like being an accountant or something like that. It'd be good for you. And then my best friend, he had an aunt and uncle that was living with him for a while. His uncle was a CPA. And so I talked to him about it. Right. And this was roughly junior high age.
CPA stands for what?
Certified Public Accountant.
Okay.
And well before high school, I pretty well decided I was going to be a CPA.
That's cool.
And anyway, so I got my degree in accounting, but I never became a CPA because by the time I got my degree in accounting, I realized there was things involved in that I didn't want any part of. You know.
I feel like that's you
yeah.
start getting involved. You're like, that's not really it, but this.
But I had a part-time job when I was in college, working as a cost accountant for this outfit. So I did sketch and stuff, and then of course your college education stuff that some of that you use all the time, whether you overt or covertly. You use that stuff, So
yeah.
So I've never regretted getting my degree in accounting, but.
And so you started working at Lockheed. Was that like right after?
No. I worked at various jobs, and then. One of the things that happened, first of all, I met Janie, and we dated for about a year and a half and then got married.
Did you guys meet at school or?
No. I was living in an apartment complex, and the swimming pool was right outside our front door. And so I spent a lot of time at the swimming pool. Mm-hmm. And one day I'm out there, and there's this gal there that lived in one of the other apartments with her parents, as a matter of fact, and she was roughly my age. And her name was Susie, and I just, spent about 5 minutes talking to her, right? Well, the next day I go out to the pool, and there's this gal sitting there in the same bathing suit that looks like Susie, and I say, "Hi, Susie," and she says, "I'm not Susie, I'm Janie." No, but she was Susie's best friend.
Oh, okay.
And she was over there, and she'd borrowed Susie's bathing suit, and they were, looked enough alike so that, my 5 minutes before of introduction was, she understood, so that's how we met. And then we went, and then a couple of days later, I'd come home from work and I'd had a couple of drinks because it was my 21st birthday. And, and anyway, so I called her up and asked her for a date. So that was our first date. Was my 21st birthday with her, and then we got married December the following year, and we're married for 12 years, and then. We decided to split up because it just, we were going in separate directions, and there were a number of reasons it was good to get divorced and get on with our lives without each other. Right. And then I convinced her, and it took me about a month of conversation to convince her that I should have custody of the kids.
Did you get full custody?
Yeah, well, technically on the divorce papers it was joint custody, but they were living with me. That was it, and it was like. She was the other parent, and they'd go visit her, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And part of the process that worked was that when I was trying to convince her that they ought to stay with me, was I never once said the kids would be better off with me, or that I'd be better off. I always said you'd be better off. I just used her as you'd be better off, you'd be better off, you'd be off, because she wanted to go out and get a job and get her life going. Because she just, from the 19 on, she's raising kids,
Yeah.
and a lot of that she's home alone on swing shift because I was working swing shift for 7.5 years, and so there was a lot of that kind of stuff. Anyway, so finally she agreed, and she went off, and that worked out extremely well for me.
Mm.
2 mantras I have was, one is the best thing that ever happened to me was meeting your grandma, and number 2 was getting custody of those kids.
Right.
And obviously both major lifestyle changes for me.
Right. And me too.
Yeah, well, yeah. I'll never forget the time. One of the little dips I have on that I was telling you earlier about the things I write about, memory things for you grandkids, was one that I have down for Jacob. Was one time, oh God, it's got to be about 10 years or so ago, something like that. You and he and Nana and I were in the car together, and you started asking him about Nana, about her marriage to Doug.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's being, she's talking about, okay, we just kind of went split. She didn't badmouth him at all, and which was really cool. You never do that to your grandkids, badmouth their other grandparent or whatever. But anyway, so she's being really cool about it and all that sort of stuff, and saying, and so we finally split up and went our own ways and stuff like that. And Jacob piped up and says, "Thank God, otherwise we wouldn't have had Pockum in our lives." And I about drove off the road with that one. That one really caught. Well, that one caught me so off guard. Well, and you just kind of reiterated the same thing, and those those kind of comments obviously made me feel really, really good, because you guys are so important to me in my life.
Well, it's just so interesting how in life something that can seem not good at the moment, can actually turn into just a beautiful thing that almost needed to happen.
Yes. Oh yeah. I didn't look back on that.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No. And then and so, like we said, then Carol and I met at that party, and then Janie moved out, and I made myself known to Carol again, and we started dating, and it all worked out really, really well. Although I will say, a couple of times during that year and a half, Carol didn't say we should stop dating. She just said, maybe we ought to start seeing other people, because she was nervous about becoming a mother of 4 kids. And so that was kind of made her gun shy. And I intellectually understood it. Emotionally, I didn't want that scenario at all. But story, I did start dating somebody else, and anyway, and then Carol and I got back together again, and then she said, we ought to start seeing other people, and so I started seeing this other gal again, and a story tangent. Maybe Nana doesn't want me to tell this, but I don't know if you know about her cousin Janie, right? She's got a cousin Janie that she's very, very, very close to, or was. They've kind of drifted apart to some extent. But she's, according to what Janie told me, that Carol says, I told Ken we started seeing other people, and damn it, he did. Anyway, Janie's telling me this story. Anyway, but whatever. I don't know if that had anything to do with anything other than an anecdote, but. So we decided to get married, and we had both been in the typical wedding the first time, and that didn't seem to work very well. So when we were dating, we'd gone up to Fort Bragg, and just for a weekend, and we'd gone to this botanical gardens up there, and we're just wandering around this botanical gardens, and we went down this little fern canyon, and there was a little bridge over a creek, and it was just a little bridge, and somehow I got planned in my mind, what a neat place to get married. And so when we decided to get married, I said, let's go up to that garden at Fort Bragg and get married on that bridge. Wow. And Janie says, you're crazy. And I said, yeah, let's do it. And she said, yeah. And so it was just the 4 kids, of course, my mom, because I didn't know where my dad was at that point. My mom and dad split when I was in my mid-20s. And my dad left my mom, and he was living in Santa Rosa area, and then he met another lady, and they got married, and were living a town outside of Santa Rosa, and then all of a sudden they just disappeared, and I didn't know what the hell happened to him. No, he didn't let me know anything, and so I didn't know what was happening. Well, I'll get back to that. But so anyway, just talking about the wedding was all. And so it was my mom, and my dad, of course, wasn't there because I didn't know where in the hell he was. And Carol's parents, and Diney, her sister, and Diney's first husband, Michael. And that was it. And so, and then I'd arranged for I called the lady at that owned the Botanical Gardens and said we want to come up and get married. And she was thrilled because we were the first ones that ever wanted to get married at their garden. And this was a special place for them. You know, that's a long story I won't bore you with, but that garden was a special, special place for the people that owned it and built it.
Do you guys have any pictures?
Yeah, I got some.
I'd like to see that.
Yeah. Anyway, and so a couple of things. We got married, and we did. And the lady said, "You know, do you have a minister?" I said, "No." She said, "Well, there's a retired minister in Fort Bragg here. You want me to arrange to have him do it?" I said, "Oh, please, thank you." You know. So we didn't know the minister from Adam. We get there, and the minister said, "Who's the best man and the lady of honor?" And we hadn't even thought about it. So Carol immediately said, "Well, Diney's my lady of honor," and the only choice was Diney's husband, who was shaky. And I turned and I says, "Kevin is." So Kevin was the best man at my wedding.
And he was how old?
He's 13. And he went, what do I do, Dad? You know. Yeah. Anyway, there was another one. Kevin, just before the wedding, he says, "Dad, what can I give you and Carol for a wedding present?" And instantly it popped in my mind. I said, "Just give us your love and understanding." And he says, "Oh, that's easy," and started to walk away. And turned around, came back after about 5 steps. He says, "The love part's easy. I don't think I'll ever understand parents." But anyway, so there was that wedding, and that was great. And then after the wedding, we went to into the town of Mendocino, and they were having an art festival there. And that was really great. And the 3 girls, we didn't have much money, so we gave them some money. And they went and had butterflies painted onto their faces, you know, the 3 girls. I forget what Kevin did, but anyway.
Did you guys have a honeymoon?
Yeah, that night we stayed in a place called Heritage House. And my mom graduated from Point Arena High School in a class of 9 in 1928, I guess it was. Yeah, 28. And anyway, the guy that built this Heritage House, which was a really, kind of upper level place where you went for the weekend or whatever, and had cabins and had big dining room, and a really, really nice thing. The guy that started that was a graduate classmate of my mom's. And so we're sitting there having dinner that night, and the waitress comes over, and the guy's standing over there, you know. And my mom says, "Oh, there's Dale Hannon, you know." Blah, blah, blah. So I tell the waitress, I says, "My mom graduated from high school with Dale Hannon." So the waitress toddles over, and he comes and sits with us and talking to my mom, and they're just jabbering away like crazy. All of a sudden, the service at our table just went way. Anyway, so that was nice, and then we went back to San Jose, and because we were living in Almaden Valley at that point, the place in Almaden Valley. We in the process of trying to buy this house in Los Gatos, and that eventually worked. But anyway, and so the kids went to their other parents, and Nana and I came up here and spent a week at Lake Almanor for a honeymoon. Yeah.
Oh. That is nice.
Yeah. I knew you'd like that part. I knew you'd like that part.
Yeah.
But anyway, and so that was that. And then we went back to thing, and I'd forgotten this. While we were on our honeymoon, we were really in kind of deep yogurt because we had kind of signed up to buy the house in Los Gatos. But we didn't have all the money until we sold the house in Almaden Valley, and that wasn't going too well. Mm-hmm. And so while we were up here, we were staying at this place. Our little cabin didn't have a phone, but the landlady who was up the way, there's 4 cabins in a row or something like that, had a phone, and she left a note on our door because we'd gone to a movie or something, and or just out, whatever, and we left a note on our door that we had a phone message in there. Well, it was our real estate lady. And so the closest phone was a payphone up the hill. We ran up the hill and down the road, the payphone, got on the phone, and the gal said, "You got an offer on the house?" We said, "We'll take it," you know.
This is for the house on Lilac Way?
No. This is to buy the house on Lilac Way.
Yeah.
Just selling the house in Almaden Valley that I lived at before. And a month or 2 before we got married, in part to save money and whatnot, Nana had moved out of the house, the condominium she was renting, and moved in with me, and so that was our home until we moved into Lilac Way, we moved into Lilac Way October 1st, 1974.
Do you remember what the address of the place was?
6377 Tamalpais.
I just want to like drive by and just kind of like reminisce.
Well, it's not terribly far from where Lisa lives.
Okay, yeah.
You know where as you're driving there, you go by this big Safeway shopping center on the right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, kitty corner from that is we live just a block off that way.
Mm.
It's relatively easy to find. If you're really interested at some point, I can tell you, or Lisa can tell you how to get there.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Weren't you saying that the people that own it now were offering to you guys to go visit it this last year?
Oh, that's the Lilac Way.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, we did. We did. Oh God, a couple months ago.
And
it's
totally different.
Yeah, but they did. They were very. They told us they were very apprehensive about would we be upset that we could destroy their home, our home kind of thing,
Yeah.
But they moved part of the back part of the house out into the backyard, about 10 or 12 feet or whatever. So the kitchen's larger, and they just done a whole bunch of different things. They built the equivalent of a wine cellar off the kitchen,
Oh, wow.
and stuff like that. They've redone the whole backyard. It looks totally different. It looks a lot better than it did.
Mm.
Where the old playhouse was way back in the corner.
Yeah.
He built an office kind of thing back there that really looks great.
Oh, wow.
I didn't go inside of it, but
Yeah.
it really looks great. I mean,
That's cool that they just contacted you one day, or like.
Carol's still in contact with one of the next door neighbors,
Uh-huh.
and so somehow through her, there was communication, and something got set up on such and such a day. We'd go over there and go through the house,
Mm-hmm.
and we were really thankful we did that, and it worked out really well.
Yeah.
And anyway, so and Carol, and we didn't see the upstairs. We didn't go upstairs,
Mm-hmm.
but they're downstairs. Some of the stuff they didn't change, but what they did change, they did an incredible job. So we were very complimentary, and they were very thankful that we were complimentary. And,
Yeah.
and they're they're really nice couple.
Yeah.
But anyway, get back to my dad's story. Yeah, he just disappeared for a while, and then Carol and I had been married for, I don't know, 2-3 years, something like that. And I got a phone call from my uncle, my dad's brother. And he said, your dad doesn't want me to tell you too much other than he's okay, he's doing fine, his health is good and all this sort of stuff, and he just didn't want you to worry. And I said, what's going on? He said, he just doesn't want me to tell you. And so, anyway, and of course my sister didn't know, nobody knew.
Yeah.
Anyway, it wasn't just me, my point. Anyway, and at some point, and I don't remember when, about a year or so after that, I got a phone call from him, and we reconnected. And he was down in Indio, which is not too far from Palm Springs, down in that area, and that's where he was living. And and your mom's parents, your grandparents, your great-grandparents, had a condominium on a golf facility kind of place down in I can't remember, one of the little towns between Palm Springs and Indio.
Mm-hmm.
And so we went down and spent some time with them, and also went over and saw my dad and spent some time with him and his wife, and that sort of stuff. And I'd met her before.
Mm-hmm.
Before he disappeared, I'd met her and spent some time with her. But anyway, so he was back in my life, and and one time he and Dixie stopped by the house in Los Gatos and spent a few days with us, and so stuff like that. And then I got the word that he had cancer, and so at one point he wasn't doing well, so we went down there, and your grandma ended up staying with her parents, and I went and stayed with Dixie because I just wanted to spend the time with the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And
Dixie's
Dixie's my stepmom.
Okay.
And anyway, so I spent all day and evening and with my dad at the hospital, and then went back to. They lived in a trailer home in a trailer park kind of thing, and so I went back and spent the night there, their place, and then got up the next day and went back and spent some time with Dad, and that was basically the last time I saw him.
Wow.
And then I got the word, from my stepbrother. Dixie had a son from her first marriage, and so he was his stepbrother to me, and so I got a call from him saying that Dad had died, and so then your mom and I went, your grandmother and I keep doing that, don't I? Yeah, your grandmother and I went down for the memorial service, of course. And then, my dad died in 1977. My sister died in 1981. She had all kinds of health problems, and they said stroke finally got her. And then my mom died in 1989. She had a very serious stroke and just never recovered. That was a story too. I was at work. I'd gone to work, and when I got to work, they told me that your nephew's been trying to get a hold of you. It's really important. And so I called I had two nephews who live in Santa Rosa. I called Mike, and he said your mom's had a serious stroke and she's in a hospital. And so I said, okay, I'll be right up, kind of thing. Yeah. And I went and told my boss, I said, my mom's had a serious stroke in Santa Rosa. And I didn't even say any more than that. He said, go. Yeah. And so I turned, that was it. Yeah. And so I jumped in the car and I was headed out, and I'm thinking, I'm going to go home and get some stuff, and then go up to Santa Rosa. And and the freeway was right there. And I got to the freeway, which meant I was 5 minutes away from climbing in the car or less. And I said, to hell with that. And I just turned right and went straight to Santa Rosa. I figured, somebody's going to come up. Carol will come up and bring the stuff, or I can just go to the store and get whatever I need, whatever. And I got to Santa Rosa, and I'll never forget this one. I got to Santa Rosa, and I get there, and Mike says, the doc wants to talk to you. He says he's got a question. He says, Mark and I aren't up to answering it. And so what it was, Mom was in a coma. And the question was, they put her on life support or not. And as the doc explained to me, if she comes out of that coma, the best scenario, the absolute best scenario, half her body will be paralyzed. Yeah. And I thought, no, not for Mom. And so I said, no, don't put her on life support. And I went back and told Mark and Mike, and Mike said, oh, yeah. I said, that's right. And he said, can you imagine her coming out of the coma and her being totally paralyzed? And her mind's working, but she's trapped in a body she has no control over. Yeah. And anyway, so Mom died, a few hours later. And
two more, but if you were in that situation,
don't pull the plug.
Pull the plug?
Yeah. In fact, we've got it in writing, in part of our trust thing. Yeah. And then also for the three daughters,
I'm sure this is maybe planned out or something like that, but do you want to be cremated? Do you
yes.
want to be buried?
Yeah, we've already got that all
Do you have
paid for and done. It's all set up.
Do you have a place you want? Do you want your ashes spread or get into the nitty gritty?
That's a running battle between Carol and I. You know what? You know the situation with your great grandparents, right?
I think so.
Okay, well, the oak tree right outside our front door, right? Their ashes are buried under that oak tree right outside our front door.
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, I thought you were at the service where they did that, because I remember a bunch of you going out there, and I couldn't quite toddle through. But anyway, then the thing was, your great grandma's sister, the Janie that I was talking about, her mom passed away, and so she wanted her ashes. She made it known she wanted her ashes buried with her sister, so that Janie brings up the ashes and be planted under the oak tree right outside her front door, which was okay except for one minor detail. The dog had died and was cremated, and she wanted the dog's ashes with her. And so Carol says, I want my ashes with my parents. I said, I don't want my ashes with that goddamn dog. So,
this is the oak tree outside your house.
Yeah, right outside the front door of our house. So anyway, that's kind of a running battle between Carol and I. And I'm not that critical of where they
Yeah.
are, but it just that little element does.
Yeah.
But I totally understand Carol wanting to be with her parents. That makes
Yeah.
100% logic, you know,
Mhm.
and emotional, more emotional than logic.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. But anyway, so my mom passed away, and then we had a memorial service up there, and my mom kind of ended up, you know, not prior to her passing away, of course. She, for years, lived in the house that I grew up in, you know, pretty much alone. There were times she had some relative come and live with her. She had one of my cousins went to Santa Rosa JC and came and lived with Mom for a couple of years while she was going to Santa Rosa JC and stuff like that. But most of the time she's living alone in that house. And with her arthritis, she had really bad arthritis. She lost her driver's license when she was pregnant with me because she couldn't turn enough to qualify. So as she grew up, as I grew up, her arthritis became her more. It was in her back, upper back and neck, and so she just got more and more bent over, stuff like that. And she was in pain and stuff. And that house and yard just kept getting more and more too much. And I was constantly trying to convince her to sell and move. So finally she did. And Carol and I hadn't been married terribly long at that point. You know, maybe 4 or 5 years, something like that. I don't remember. Anyway, so Mom found this place is run by the Salvation Army, as a matter of fact, but it was kind of like a retirement home, and it was like a 6 or 7 story thing, and they had like 12 apartment units on each floor. And the one my mom had was like a 1-bedroom apartment. It had a little kitchen and a living room and a bedroom and bath, of course. And so it was perfect for her.
Yeah.
And so she sold the house I grew up in to one of my nephews. And so that was kept in the family for a while, you know, and he eventually sold it and moved somewhere else. But anyway, and so Mom, when she moved out of the house and into that apartment, physically and mentally, she just perked up.
That's nice.
You know, it was just the mental strain of trying to keep up with the house and all that sort of stuff, and plus the physical part was just too much for her. And so she just really perked up, and it was a great spot. She had a kitchen. She could cook for herself whenever she wanted to, and downstairs they had a cafeteria restaurant kind of thing. She could go down there for breakfast, lunch, or dinner when she chose to, and so it was optional for her.
Yeah.
And there was a store that was just a half a block away, and so she could go there whenever she wanted. And part of the thing, the groups there, where they would go on trips together sometimes, and you know, she went on a trip to Hawaii one time, and she talked to me about. She says, if I go to Hawaii, that's going to cost some money. And I said, Mom, what the hell else are you going to spend it on? I said, don't try and save it for me, you know, just go. And so she did, and she really enjoyed it. And anyway, but one story I probably ought to add to this. Before Mom passed away, of course, I had my nephew and a niece, and the niece really wasn't doing very well. Her name was Cindy. And Mom, at one point, we had a very, very brief discussion about her estate, which wasn't that significant, but she said, when I'm gone, just make sure that Cindy's really taken care of. And so when she passed away, I took half of the money and gave it to Cindy.
That's nice.
And she ended up using that money to buy a house up in the Clear Lake area. And then I took some of it and gave it to Mark and Mike, and they both were surprised. They said, we didn't expect to get any. He said, we thought, because Mom was gone, that you'd get it all. I said, no, it doesn't work that way. And Carol and I took my share, and we went to England for five weeks on it.
Nice.
And so anyway, so that worked out. But
Yeah.
and then along the way, 3 girls we know got married and started having kids.
Yeah. And it started happening quick. Like
Yeah.
You guys went
Well,
having a couple
for
grandkids.
those that don't know, for those that are seeing this and don't know the scenario, Marcy was the first one, and she had Olivia.
Or
in
Lisa and Olivia.
Emily. I said,
Oh, Marcia.
you know, I never get you grandkids' names mixed up, do I? Anyway, she had Emily, and then she had Joshua, and then Kelly had Jacob, and then Lisa had Olivia, And then all three of the girls got pregnant at the same time, and Lisa
Yeah.
had twins.
Yeah.
So he,
There's the twins,
so we had.
Maya and Isabel, and then Tim was like a month after, right?
Yeah, and then
I
you
was
were
2 months
2 months after Tim,
Yeah.
and we call it the second wave. And there's a couple pictures of your mom. You know, your mom made a little video for my birthday last year, and two pictures she's got back to back. One is the three of them sitting on a couch at Mimi and Papa's place in the Villages, and all three of them are sitting there, and their bellies are out like this, right? And the next slide shows the four of you kids in little love seats along on our deck.
Yeah, I've seen that
just
picture.
bam, bam.
I always find that picture super funny because everyone is like in kind of like baby, like good baby face, and I'm like newborn raisin baby face.
Well, the other one is it's not easy to tell you apart except for Tim.
Yeah.
He's a butterball.
Jeez.
Oh God.
Oh, man.
But anyway, so fortunately for Carol and I, and then later on, Marcy had Chris, and so we got 9 wonderful grandkids, and they're all different, which is good. I mean, even the twins aren't, carbon copy, and which is great. It's like our 4 kids being different also.
Yeah.
And of course, one thing I didn't cover that a little emotional, but our son Kevin, who was my oldest, he got cancer and suffered for that for about 3 years. And I went,
When he got it?
he had to have been about 43, 44 when he was diagnosed. And he was living in Sweden at the time. He lived in Sweden for the last 20 years, and he never came home full time. And he ended up, when he was 47 years old, he ended up passing away in the hospital in the town of Lund, where he lived in Sweden. And so that was kind of traumatic. And at various times during that, his parents and his siblings would be there in various elements, and sometimes all of us would be there together to support him, including just before he passed away.
Yeah.
We were all there, and then people had to leave for various things. And
I was pretty young when I knew him.
that was 12 years ago.
Yeah. So, like 9 years old, maybe?
Yeah.
Around that?
Remember when we scattered his? No, not when we scattered his ashes, because that was just his 3 sisters, Carol and I, and his mom went up to the place. But about a year later or so, the whole family, the 16 of us went up there. 17 of us went up there.
We go after the Gist Walk, right?
Yes, that's right. Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we'd also did it on his birthday or something like that. But I remember the first time the whole family was up there, I asked, okay, don't feel obligated, but anybody who's got memories of Kevin, speak up. And Chris was the first one.
Well, Chris?
Yeah, and he said, I don't remember him very well, but he started talking about it. And that was so neat, And the other thing I remember about all that, and each one of you, all 9 of you kids said something, And I think actually all 17 of us did. But one of the other things I remember at his memorial service, when we were there, it got to the point where people were, standing up and saying stuff about Kevin and stuff like that, and some of that was really, really good stuff, Anyway, and then at one point, Lisa gets a chair and puts it in front of the mic, and Isabel steps over and stands up on a chair so she can reach the mic. And she's saying, everybody's saying such a nice thing about wonderful. She says, but I just want everybody to know I'm really going to miss him, and stuff like that. Yeah. And as she's walking away, I forget it was either Jacob or Josh said, God, I'm not brave enough to do that, And I was so proud of Isabel to stand up and do that,
Yeah. One of my memories of him was, I think it was around Christmas time, and we didn't know that he was coming.
Yes.
And he surprised us all, and we're just like, this is the best Christmas present ever.
Yes.
It was just such a surprise.
Yes. He was in the back seat of the car laying down because that's what he had to do. He was, he was pretty sick. And And so I think I told your mothers that he was coming, but I said don't tell the grandkids because this would be wonderful.
Yeah.
And I remember Jacob and Josh particularly came out the car to help carry stuff, and Kevin climbs out of the car, and you could just see their faces, you know, you know. And of course, all you kids reacted the same way, you know.
Yeah, I wish I could have visited him in Sweden, and like, especially now, like, now that I've moved abroad, like, I feel like we just have so much to like talk about, and like,
he would love that.
yeah, just like, I don't know, just kind of talking about, like adventures and stuff like that too, but like also, kind of the harder side of moving abroad and like being apart from your family and you know not seeing people as much. Like, I guess how was that for you, like as a parent, not seeing your kid as much?
Well, it was an evolution thing, so it wasn't like bang, you know.
Yeah.
Okay, a bit of story on that whole thing with him in Sweden. He was like 20, 21 years old and floundering, as a lot of 20, 21-year-olds are wont to do. You know, I certainly hell was. Anyway, and so at one point he came to me and said, Dad, I'm going to take time off of school. I'm going to go bum around Europe for about 4 months. And we had a very, very animated father-son discussion.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that caught me off guard. But anyway, so he did that. And that was apprehension because I didn't hear from him for about a month, and I would, you know, he's on a bicycle wandering around Europe, and I don't hear from him a month. You know, you can imagine all that's going through my mind.
Yeah.
Anyway, and so he calls me, and everything's fine, and so. But anyway, he comes back from that, and he's much more serious, right? And he's at Davis, and he's really getting serious about school, and he's majoring in international relations, and he's taking some Swedish classes, and he really liked Scandinavia when he was there. Norway and Sweden he really loved when he was there. And so they get an opportunity, and there's 10 or 12 of them, to go over to Sweden and are taking classes, similar to you, taking classes that are taught in Swedish. And so their excuse me, their grade points go because you can imagine. But Kevin went over 3 months early and took a concentrated Swedish course to even get better. I mean, he already spoke some Swedish, but he really wanted to get. So he got some concentrated. So he spoke pretty good Swedish, but still. So he's taking all these classes in Swedish. So he finishes that. He comes home and gets his degree, and by then he's decided he really wants to move to Lund. Okay, so he goes over to Lund to absolutely make sure that he's making the right decision. And he meets Helena, and that solidifies it, right? He's definitely going to. So he comes back here. He gets a job working nights at IBM and living with us and saving up his money. And at the end of that year, Helena comes over, and they borrow his mom's car and drive around and whatever, and then come back and fly to Sweden, and he lives the rest of his life there. And that's how it came.
He was happy with it?
On the whole, the couple of issues you raised, though, there were times he was still treated as, because he was not Swedish, he was still treated differently.
Yeah.
Not a lot, but there was a lot. But he was in a college town, so there were a lot of people there that weren't Swedish.
Yeah.
And there were difficulties with that. He said a couple of things that you could relate to. One is he said he spent a lot of time realizing that he wasn't totally fit for either world.
Right.
He wasn't really totally Swedish, and he really wasn't totally American anymore, you know.
Right.
And then there were situations like Christmas. You know, one year he decided, because he was coming home on Christmas. He said one time, I want to be here at summers when people aren't in school and blah blah blah, and I can, you know, have some warm weather and stuff like that. So he came home in summer. So he spent Christmas in Sweden. He said that wasn't fun at all. He said people were really nice to him. He had invites to go to the thing. He went to somebody's house. But he was really the fifth wheel, you know, because he wasn't family, and they were all, you know. And he said they were really nice to him and treated him as good as they could. There was nothing wrong with the way they treated him, but he wasn't part of the family, and he was there, you know.
I can relate to that, where it's just like, it's you're kind of on the outside. As nice as people are, it's like, you kind of want to see your family. You want to, and it's just. Yeah, Christmas time, birthdays, like.
Well, Christmas particularly.
Yeah, those times roll around, and it's like, I find it like pretty hard, or just like, or like in general, like, just knowing that like time is passing, time that you can't get back, is pretty hard, But yeah, I feel like that's where I feel the terror is. Like, I feel almost, I wouldn't say maybe more at home in France, but like I think I like it more there as like a place, but not having my family is like, that's where the terror is
Yeah.
like.
And it is a cultural
Yeah.
adjustment too.
Yeah.
Because no matter where you are, outside, well, even within the United States, you go to different places. It's a different culture.
Yeah. So it's like when I'm here, I'm missing France. When I'm there, I'm missing here.
Yep.
So it's
One,
highs and lows.
one of the things,
Kevin and I did that helped. Well, two things. One, Kevin came home for a month every year, and the fact he never got married and had a family gave him a lot of flexibility to do stuff like that, And so he was much more detached from anything than a lot of people would be able to. And the other thing was, at least once a month, he and I would get on the phone and talk for like an hour and a half or whatever, And once he was sick, we made an agreement very early on, per his request. We'd spend the first part of the conversation talking about his health, and we keep it to 5 minutes or less. Because he, everybody that he talked to, that's what he wanted to hear about, And he said, "I really like to start talking about something." So then we talk about family, music, sports. I mean, just go on and on and on. You get together with somebody, whatever you got in common, the conversation flow, right?
Yeah.
But so we do that for, like I say, if we talk for an hour, it's a short conversation.
Yeah.
And that helped a lot.
Yeah, I imagine like it was even harder back then because like now we have like WhatsApp groups where I can send pictures, I can video call, and so like the conversation's a little easier. It's easier to be in contact, but yeah, I think it's not like being in person. And I wasn't actually planning on coming back here this year. I was thinking maybe next year or something like that, and I was just like, I gotta go back. I wanna do this. Like I wanna like talk to you. I wanna see my dog. I wanna
Sure.
And also my mom was like, I can't fathom 2 years without seeing you. She's like, maybe I'll come in winter time.
Well, and then plus the shot thing was important too.
Yeah, getting vaccinated. And I'm really glad I did. Like this is.
Well, I know I was kidding you about the only reason you wanted to come home was to give Freddie a big hug.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Oh God.
Well, I don't know where in hell to go with my story from this point on because you pretty well know as much of it now at this point, other than obviously the one point that, well, Carol's parents moved to the Villages in 1977, and we didn't even know the Villages existed until they moved there, right? And so, of course, with time, we got very well acquainted with it. And we'd made the decision some time ago that when we did move, it was going to be to the Villages. Well, we love the house and love living in Los Gatos and. But the neighborhood was changing. The neighborhood was getting much younger and our friends were all leaving and whatever. And the yard was getting bigger and bigger every year, and the stairs were getting longer.
Yeah.
And, it was just, and at one point, Carol said to me, if we're going to move the Villages, we ought to get our butts over there where we still can play golf and that sort of stuff. And it was a very, very short conversation, and I agreed. And
I
so,
think it's been great
and
for you guys.
yeah, and we haven't regretted that move at all. It's one of the best things we've ever done. And
Let me just make sure it's still.
yeah,
And we are still going.
okay. Anyway, so yeah, moving the Villages and particularly Carol has gotten involved in so many activities there.
Yeah.
And being the social animal she is, and I mean that as a compliment, we made a lot of friends, more through her than through me, although I did too, like with the choir and the sirs there and stuff like that. And so we've just got a bunch of really, really, really good friends that we feel very close to and very supportive of each other and all that kind of stuff, So moving there was a real blessing.
Honestly, like when I think about retirement, I'm just like, I just want to do it like Nana and Pockum, like have a bunch of friends, play games, travel, like really just living the high life.
what you need to do is have Nana write you a checklist of all the things to do to make friends and
Yeah.
and that sort of stuff. What?
Oh man. Do you guys have like a rough idea of how many countries you visited?
Oh my
'Cause
God!
I feel like you guys have traveled
we
everywhere.
well, let's put it this way: we have. There's hardly any country in Western Europe we haven't been to.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, like Liechtenstein or something like that. Maybe I can't remember of a single country in Western Europe we haven't been to.
Yeah.
And then, of course, in addition, we've been to Canada, Mexico.
Costa Rica.
Well, Carol's been to Central America. I haven't.
Uh,
And we've been to the Bahamas, and then, of course, New Zealand and Australia.
You're right. Yeah.
So we have been very fortunate in,
Mm-hmm.
and the vast majority of that has got to do with Carol. She's the one that got me going in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Our first trip was to Europe in 1985, and we started out, we were going to have like 7 or 8 countries we were going to go to, right? And then we started thinking, 5 weeks? 7 or 8 countries, that's too much. So we started paring down a little bit. And at one point, I just said, okay, Carol, what if we're going there, what one country do you really want to go to? And she said France,
Yeah.
right? And I said, I want to go to Spain.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
and Carol says, I don't want to go to Spain. I've been to Mexico. I said, no, you don't understand. You don't get the picture at all. And I said, the food's different, the people are different. It's, it's different, And so she agreed. And so they're bordered next to each other, so that worked out perfect. So we landed at an airport, and we basically spent 2.5 weeks in each country. We landed at the airport, got a car, and did our own thing for 5 weeks. And Carol fell in love with Spain, and it just worked out so great.
Yeah, I love
And then once that started, that was pretty much our scenario for most trips,
Mm-hmm.
is, land someplace, get a car, and do our own thing for and we kind of shrunk it down to, now it's less than 4 weeks usually, but for a long time it was pretty much 5 weeks.
Yeah. That's a
And that's worked out so well for us. And Carol is an incredible traveling companion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We travel together so well.
Yeah.
Every once in a while there's a glitch and we get into a little spat, but it's pretty rare,
Was that
and they don't last long.
the first time that you had left the country?
No, I had been to Canada and Mexico before that,
Okay.
but just kind of drive across the border kind of thing
Mhm.
stuff.
Well, it was seriously amazing. Like, was it 2019 or I think it was 2019, where you guys came to France, and I was living in France at that time.
Oh yeah.
And I just have this like one memory where I was walking back from school. I'm walking on the Cour Mirabeau, and I just see you guys like hanging out at Le Deux Garçons, and I was just like, oh my gosh, like, this is so cool. Or like when you guys rented that amazing place in Villefranche.
Oh yes.
Like,
yes.
we had dinner with you and Maya and Joelle and your 2 friends.
Oh
and
yeah.
I was
Oh
just
yeah. Oh, and
some of my
me-
favorite memories.
Well, meeting Darian's grandparents there, that's special.
yeah.
They're such lovely people.
Yeah, it was cool to like finally have
But yeah,
those
that
two worlds
place in
kinda meet.
Villefranche, we still once in a while. I don't know, what was a travel thing we saw that they went to Villefranche. Of course, Caroline, and there's a screensaver on the TV that every once in a while Villefranche comes up there.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so that's a special place. That was, and that the string of restaurants down by the wharf area. That was perfect. We had dinner down there at one restaurant or another every night.
Yeah.
And then that one restaurant we all ate at, it was right at the end of the wharf there.
Yeah, view of the ocean.
Yeah.
And then we've also just had. I just did a backflop.
You ever admit these to your brother?
That was my dad.
Oh, was that your
Yeah,
dad?
yeah.
Oh, I thought that was Jacob.
Oh my gosh. And just to get back to like travel stories, just Kauai, like I've been so fortunate to be able to go to paradise. Like I think I was going. I have pictures of me like little.
Oh, I remember you.
little kid, you wouldn't put your toe in the water.
Yeah.
One time,
I don't remember how it involved, but we're at the beach, and you got to take a nap. So I'm sitting in the car with you while you're taking a nap while everybody else is down the water. So you owe me big time. Oh God. No, well that yeah, we hadn't discussed Hawaii at all, but that's obviously a huge thing when we went over there, started going over there, and I forget what year it was that Nana and I went the first time. We went to Maui and Oahu, and then with your parents and you guys, it was the first time we went to Kauai. We stayed at a place at Maui, and then we went at a place on the south end of Kauai, and near that cove down there. You know, I can't remember the name of it, but you know, where we go down that cove sometime at the south end. But anyway, we had a thing there, and we had to put up a barricade by the front door because we wanted the front door open to keep you from crawling out and going out, getting out.
Do you remember?
But anyway,
what year it was?
No, I don't.
Probably.
But it was quite a while ago because it had to be about 16 years ago or more. But anyway, but we went to Kauai, and your parents almost bought timeshare at Honolulu Bay.
Honolulu Bay, yeah.
And then they got to thinking about it financially and whatnot, and they decided, because I didn't think it was a good idea for them at their point in time, and so they've changed their mind and they were able to back out. You got 48 hours or something like that, and so they backed out. But anyway, so a couple of years later, or something like that, we were there on Kauai, and it ended up just the two of us at some point, and we had a day to kill. And so, well, you met my friend Patty in her place. Well, we went and stayed with them on the night we had to kill, right? And which they were very gracious and stuff like that. And oh yeah, and that waterfall off their back deck. Anyway, so the next day we had some time to kill before we our plane was ready to take off. It was late in the afternoon or something like that we were gonna fly out. So Carol says, let's go Honolulu Bay and talk to them about timeshares. And I said, okay. So we get there and we go up to the desk and tell the guy we want to talk to somebody about timeshares. She said their office is closed. And I said, I'll bet you if you call down there, they'll open up. And so she called down there, in about 3 seconds, the sales manager was up at the desk. Anyway, so we talked to him, and obviously we bought.
Yeah.
And we were wise enough to get 2 weeks every other year instead of 1 week every year. And we didn't even know that was available until we were just talking with a guy, and he said, here's an option. Bingo, you know. And we have never once, even for 30 seconds, considering about trading that or doing anything with it but using it every other year. And that's worked out so well for us for so many reasons. And the family gatherings over there, they've just been so nice.
Cool, like, also incorporating like other parts of the family, like the Adolphs and the Smiths. And
well, the only ones that haven't been there is Don and Chris.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because
are you guys planning on still going, or?
We're going there in September.
Oh.
Of this year and September of next year.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. We've already got the other room booked. We got 2 couples that are going over one week each this year. But yeah. Anyway, yeah, and as I say, that until physically or whatever I'm not able to do it, we're going there for 2 weeks every other year. One of the amazing things about that scooter was to get around that place.
Yeah, and you don't have to do much. You just flop on a beach and just hang out.
Yeah.
Or, just the view out of the place is just
and
amazing.
there's so many neat things to do there. Like I love the town of Honolulu. I can go in the town of Honolulu, 2 or 3 times during that trip. And there's other things we do when we're there. Go down the Poipu area, and that's what I was trying to think of, the Poipu area. Where that cove is, Poipu Beach or whatever they call it. And that's there's a rental apartment units or something like that right nearby there. We used to walk from the apartment right to the beach there.
Yeah, we did Poipu. I think we did, was it Anini?
Oh yeah,
there's a little one that
we had that house. We had that house with a big quail.
Yeah.
Right there at Anini. Right there at Anini. Yeah. Oh yeah. We've stayed a number of different places there.
Also, Jade Lily. Right?
Which what?
Jade Lily.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was only about 3 days. I forget why we ended up having to. What I forget the scenario why we ended up having to find a place to stay for. That was unique.
Yeah, definitely different than our other places. Way off. And
well, just driving to and from that thing was an ordeal.
Yeah. No, I like that place though.
That was special. But just those damn stairs.
Yeah.
I couldn't go there anymore.
Yeah. I was up on stilts and right on the river.
You guys stop having so much fun.
Well, we'll try.
We gotta stop, guys.
Anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, obviously in my life I've had some bumps in the road. I don't recommend anybody losing a kid.
No.
Going to a divorce is not pleasant, but that was certainly necessary, and I don't regret doing it. And there are other things in my life that I regret, and mistakes I made, and things I wish I could redo. But on the whole, I've been very, very, very fortunate in my life. The people I've been surrounded by, the friends I've had, having Carol, like I said earlier, meeting Carol is the best thing ever happened to me. I got 9 wonderful grandkids, et cetera, et cetera. So on the whole, I've had a very, very, very fortunate life.
That's beautiful. Let me give you a hug.
Okay, I can do that.
Oh man.
I
amazing.
assume that's it.
Yeah, that was amazing talking to you.
Oh,
Thank you.
that was great. Obviously, you could ask me other questions. We could have gone on for hours, but
Always
let's
easy
keep
talking.
let's keep it a little short. And then you definitely got to do this with Nana.
Yeah.